We are right now finding out much more about the murderers of 25-year-old British soldier Lee Rigby, because the trial of his two killers is taking place in London, England.
We swear by the Almighty Allah, we will never stop fighting you until you leave us alone. We must fight them as they fight us, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I apologise that women had to witness this today, but in our lands, our women have to see the same. You people will never be safe. Remove your governments, they don't care about you. Do you think David Cameron is going to get caught in the street? When we start busting our guns, do you think the politicians are going to die? No, it's going to be the average guy like you. Moronic scum. It's horrific, horrific. These Islamic fundamentalist monsters, they hit this young man at about, 60 kilometres an hour in their car, unconscious. They butchered him then. They literally ripped out his guts from his body, and they tried very hard, almost achieved it, tried to cut off his head. The evidence is so vile that members of the poor guy's family ran from the court in tears.
I just want to say that I love Lee. I always will. And I'm proud to be his wife. He was a devoted father to our son Jack. And we'll both miss him terribly.
Our hearts have been ripped apart from us, and everyone is struggling to cope with this tragedy. Sleep well, young soldier. Your job is done. But as God takes us one by one, our chain will link again. Thank you.
Leading Muslims in Britain at the time condemned the killing. But I've read dozens of articles and watched so many interviews about the incident. And you know what? I am shocked at how often and how quickly British and American foreign policy comes into the discussion. It's irrelevant. This is about the murder of an innocent young man. Now, a radical Muslim cleric who is now banned from the United Kingdom has claimed God destined for Rigby to die. Omar Bakri Muhammad spoke from Lebanon and praised as heroes the two killers. Now, he's not typical, but he's not alone. Anjem Choudhury is a prominent British Muslim. He was born in Britain. He was chairman of the Society of Muslim Lawyers. Now, he doesn't speak for all British Muslims, not even the majority, but he has a sizable following, and his views are shared by many in the Islamic world, whether we want to deny it or not. This is him speaking just after the murder on Newsnight, one of the most influential news programmes on British television.
So, when you saw him standing there with his bloodied hands and meat cleavers, were you horrified?
I think that we were shocked, like everybody else.
Horrified?
We were shocked. I mean, it was a shocking scene. There's no doubt about that.
But do you abhor what he did?
Well, you know, I think that what he said explains what he did. And
that's a different thing. No, that's a different thing. I'm really wanting your reaction when you saw the screen. No, when you saw that, when you saw the images of him, were you horrified?
When I saw what took place, I was shocked. But let me just say one thing. What he said in the clip, which has been played now quite widely, I think not many Muslims can disagree with, because he was talking about the British foreign policy. He was saying that many people are being killed abroad.
Let's just be quite clear. You have absolutely... You're making a very big assertion there, and I have to say I would disagree that many Muslims...
Most Muslims around the world would
I would just say to you that I find it quite extraordinary that you could not say that you abhorred the scene of him standing, what he had done. He had actually... killed a man in the street, and you can't bring yourself to say...
One man killed in the street does not equate to the hundreds of thousands and millions, in fact, who have been slaughtered by the British and American and their foreign policy, those who have been tortured in Guantanamo Bay, those who have been rendered off to be tortured by brutal regimes.
By the way, she thinks that he is unusual, unique. That's media party, BBC, tattooed down her spine. She doesn't get it. Then there is the murderer's family. Well, how did they react? Have a look at this photograph now. Oh, that's the sister. She seems to be absolutely petrified. The sister of one of the Islamic killers. Now, she was taken in for questioning by the police. Doesn't look devastated to me. Does she to you? Look, in spite of what some people will tell you, none of this is simple, and few issues are simple, in fact. People are composed of spirit, flesh, feelings, fears, ambitions, love, hatred, all sorts of things. Because so many in the West have abandoned religion and religiosity, we mistakenly assume, smugly so, that this is the norm. But for hundreds of millions, even billions of people, God and faith matter more than anything else. They will die for their beliefs, and many will kill for them as well. Denial serves none of us, and it particularly portrays moderate Muslims trying to carve out a life in the Islamic world and the West, here too, where they can continue to embrace their religion but adapt to new modern values and virtues. Liberal secular complacency and ignorance must not be allowed to drown them in their swim towards coexistence. Here is the last message young Lee wrote to his mum. It's now been made available for some time, actually. This is what he said. Good night, Mum. I hope you had a fantastic day today, because you are the most fantastic and one in a million mum that anyone could ever wish for. Thank you for supporting me all these years. You're not just my mum, you're my best friend. So good night. Love you loads. Remember him every day, every night if you can, but also remember that if we are to solve this problem, we have to be honest about the Quran, Islam, the teachings of Sharia, and why jihadist attacks occur, and forgive me, will continue to occur.
We swear by the Almighty Allah, we will never stop fighting you until you leave us alone. We must fight them as they fight us, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I apologise that women had to witness this today, but in our lands, our women have to see the same. You people will never be safe. Remove your governments, they don't care about you. Do you think David Cameron is going to get caught in the street? When we start busting our guns, do you think your politicians are going to die? No, it's going to be the average guy like you.
Our land. You've barely left London in your life. He's got a classic London black accent, even the phrases he uses, the slang. You heard in the monologue what I thought about this, but here are the fundamental, if not fundamentalist, questions to ask. Is this random, brutal, grotesque violence, or is there a genuine religious motivation? Can we separate, as white politicians seem to do all the time, Islam from this sort of behaviour? It has nothing to do with Islam, we're told by Bush and Cameron and Blair and all the world leaders. Well, Tariq Fatah, Muslim Canadian Congress author, activist, is a bit more honest than most of those people. Look, only an idiot would say that all Muslims act thus. That's obviously horribly untrue. But there's a theme, and that is that so often, invariably, this sort of violence is committed by Muslims in the name of Islam.
Yes, they do. One thing that you might have missed is that the gentleman was speaking in an English accent. Yeah. That is not geographical. It is through the internet. You will see Pakistanis, Nigerians, Arabs who speak English now speak with a specific accent that I can tell instantly they've been to the same, schooling system off campuses that teaches you that you are separate, you are supreme, and you're fighting the rest of the world. And I can tell how one speaks. Well, may Allah be pleased, is not a joke anymore. It's,
Oh, the phrasing, yeah. I mean, the accent was classic South London, yeah. but the phrasing is specifically Islamic. So this is a question we have to ask. Most people won't even ask the question, but every time an attack like this occurs, and it will happen again somewhere, frequently I would think.
But right now it might be happening anywhere in the world.
Well, exactly, but politicians, non-Muslim politicians, conservative and liberal and socialists, will say this has nothing to do with Islam, this is betraying Islam. Is that true?
It's of course not true. If these politicians are scared, I would give them the benefit of doubt that they're ill-informed. But after 12 years of terrorism and 20,000 incidents, they may be dumb not to know that. And since they are all smart politicians, I can conclude that they're cowards. They are thinking that if they appease the jihadis, they might be let off. And so you look at the attitude in the United Kingdom, where the man is walking around with a cleaver in his hand, blood on his shoulders, and there is no revulsion. And there are people who are apologists.
I think there was revulsion. I think there was fear. There was confusion.
Murder, not at the ideology behind which happened. I'm not concerned at what happens primarily as a crime or as an act of terror. My concern is that the ideology that is reaching out to these young men who were maybe 10 years old at 9/11 are now in their 20s, fully imbibed, deeply believing that they are the soldiers of God, that they have to die in His service, and the true life begins after one dies.
Well, this Well, that's not confined to Muslims. There are many people who believe this is merely the land of shadows, but it doesn't lead them to go and slaughter people as though they were animals. The man you just saw there, he said he loves Allah more than his children. Now, I think people of deep faith would say they love God very much, but there's almost a death wish and a different notion of martyrdom. A Christian would say that you have to be prepared, if necessary, to die for your faith. Islamic martyrdom seems to be, I want to die and kill for my faith.
Because for them, life does begin after death. They're merely in a transit lounge on earth, waiting for the flight that will take them to paradise. And the only way they can get there is by killing in the name of Islam. They genuinely believe that Muslims who are not part of this fight are infidels and deserve to be killed.
He certainly said, well, both of them said they wish that they'd been shot dead. They were shot, both of them, but they'd been shot dead because they wanted to go to paradise. If it was a handful of people, that can be dealt with. It's not a handful of people. The actual actions, relatively few would commit them. Support for those actions, I'm tired of the denial. There are many people who will refuse to condemn or tacitly approve of what happened.
Let's go by exact figures. 12% of Canadians in the Environics poll a couple of years ago, or maybe earlier than that, supported the right of the Toronto 18 to do what they did. That's 12% of Muslims in Canada. You go to the United Kingdom, where about 40% support Sharia law. Sharia law permits such acts of murder because the texts are written. There are volumes of texts that determine how to kill, how to plunder, how to loot, how to rape concubines, how to share your concubines if they are non-Muslim. It's horrendous what's happening. And for academics studying Islamic theology not to know this or to pretend that they not know this, I'm sure they're just looking for an enhancement in their career.
And that old canard of, well, all religions can be thus interpreted. I don't see the mass, repeated, regular interpretation of Christianity and Judaism leading to such violence. It simply doesn't happen. It's a lie to say it does.
I think it's compounded by the fact that they genuinely believe they are victims. When they refuse to acknowledge almost 1,000 years of repeated invasions and plunder of, for example, India. I've just returned from there.
By Islamic armies.
The wounds left behind by 1,000 years of plunder are very deep. So one has to start by acknowledging there's a problem within the community and how it applies faith.
Tarek, always so refreshing to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.